If you're watching this video, it's probably because a friend has invited you to a game of Twilight Imperium and has said you should watch a video first, and you thought, really? For a board game? And you know what? They're not wrong. You should. Even if it's not this video, you definitely should read up on this game first. But surely, if it's that much hassle, is it worth it? Oh yeah. Oh yeah. If you're into sandbox games, 4X games, empire building games or conquest games, anything of that sort, this is the mother of all board games. So first things first, if you're setting up for your very first game of Twilight Imperium, you should know this table is not big enough. I've set up for 6 players here, and there just isn't room to lay out all the cards for all of the players. When I play this with 4 players, there's barely enough room on this table, and I put a side table out for it. Having 6 players, you're going to need 2 tables. And the second point is you're going to need to start in the morning. A group of veteran TI players might be able to get this game done in 4 hours, maybe even less if they're very experienced at the game. But you're new, you're going to be checking the book or asking questions. You need to allow all day to play this game. So is it still worth it?
Yes!
There simply isn't another game on the market anything like Twilight Imperium. It is the godfather of empire building board games. The rules literally change during play. They're voted on by a Galactic Council. I mean, it's epic. You're going to war with fleets of spaceships and squabbling over petty resources and little borderlands, or even if it's not borderlands, some obscure objective you've been given to get a certain planet from a certain place, and it erupts into conflict, or maybe you do it diplomatically. There are so many ways to play and win this game. It is an amazing game. So how do we begin to understand this epic game that's so vast that the rules aren't even fixed? Well, the truth is, everything you see on this table, bar one thing, is a distraction. This little track that on the first time you play should count to 10. You might, once you're a bit more experienced, play to 14. This is the victory point track. This is the game. All of this, it's a distraction. But oh, what a distraction it is. And you may well find, if you're languishing down in 4th or 5th position and you've got no hope of winning, you might well just have just as much fun just playing the politics and screwing over somebody who screwed you over earlier in the game. This is an amazing, fun, epic game, bordering on the mega games that where you've got 30 or 40 players. This you play with just 6, but it's the same kind of vibe. This is an amazing game. Of course, it's not everyone's cup of tea, but for anyone who's into those sandbox or kingdom building games, this is the best board game you will ever play. So as a group, you are about to sit down for your first ever game of Twilight Imperium. And there's a few suggestions in the book, such as use certain 6 races, this collection of 6 races to begin with. Should you use those races? Probably, but if you want to mix it up, you know what, they're not that well balanced. And the game isn't 100% perfectly balanced, and it kind of doesn't matter. The 6 that they suggest are relatively simple and easy races to play, but the Sardak Nor are quite weak by comparison to the universities of Jol-Nar. The Emirates of Akan and Federation and Sol are again strong races, and in fact, all things being equal, the winner of the first game is going to be from one of those 3, and the Sardak Nor player is going to feel a bit left out. So the first thing I'd say is, yes, maybe use those races, but give the Sardak Nor and maybe Barony of Letnev and Expiring Kingdom to the stronger players in your game, particularly the Sardak Nor. The people who generally win board games, that's the person to give Sardak Nor to in your first go. Alternatively, use the other races. The reason they're not included is because they've got more exceptions to the rules. There's 17 in the box. And you might want to know the game a bit better before using some of these and understanding how to get the most out of them. If you're going to do that, definitely avoid races like the Winnow, the Lizix Minenet, the Necrovirus. They're tricky races to play if you've not played the game before. And that brings us on to the map. Should you use the default map? Well, if you're playing a 6-player game, it's probably just as well. The 6-player map in the book is quite well balanced. I've never done the 5-player map, I've never really looked much at it. The 4-player map, definitely not. May as well read up the rules on laying the map out. This is not a balanced map in the book. The 3-player one looks okay. So if you're doing a 4-player game, don't bother with the map in the book. Just read the rules on custom map layouts. And you might go thinking, well, I know better, I'm going to do this. You know what, it's your game, you go and do it. This is advice from somebody who's played a fair bit of TI. You might want to heed it. If you don't, I don't care. Now, I could talk for hours about how to win at Twilight Imperium. I'm not the best player in the world. I am pretty good. I've only lost 2 games. One of them was the most humiliating defeat of any board game I've ever played, and the other one I came second. So I'm fairly good, but this is a vast game, and I think anyone who claims to know it all is talking rubbish. But what I can say with absolute certainty is this VP track, the scorecard, is your route to victory. And you can still win if you're languishing right down in last place with 1 turn to go. Not that there's a fixed number of turns in this game, but you can score 6 VP in a single turn. The game's only up to 10. So yes, victory in this game is open until the very end. But there's a lot of things you can do to set yourself up for victory. And invariably, it will be one of those leading players who gets the throne of Mechatol Rex and becomes ruler of the galaxy. Keep your eye on these. These are the victory point cards. This is what the game is all about. And if an objective comes up that says you should go and fight somebody to take a home system, do it. It doesn't matter if they're going to get, oh, you've taken my home system. Rah, I'm going to come at you. Who cares? Because they should be playing for the victory points as well, and if the victory points don't tell them to go for the home system, maybe there's another objective that's within their easy reach, they should be doing that. And that's one of the big lessons of TI, is don't try to play defensively and build a galactic empire with good diplomatic relations with everybody. If you want to win this game, you're going to have to be selectively aggressive. So if a player attacks you, try not to take it too personally. Of course, if you've said, if you do that, I'll do this, then absolutely, do whatever this is. As a rule, when I play this game, I always honour my word. If I say something, I will do it. And that way, the people I'm playing against know that my word is my bond and I can be trusted. Now, treachery should not be underestimated. It's a very powerful tool. Now that's the general strategies out of the way, the things that you should be mindful of throughout the game. But of course, if we're really going to understand this board game, we need to look at the mechanics of how it works. And the core of Twilight Imperium is in these strategy cards. But another very important and often overlooked mechanic are these. These are your actions, if you like. These are the things that determine what you can do in a single round. Now, the first thing to note here is I strongly advise flipping the counters on your fleet section so that the ship graphic is facing the top, and then the adjacent ones to have your symbol, your logo, like that, you see. And that just helps, just in case if things get knocked, you know that, oh, look, that should be over there. It's a really useful feature of these tokens. But how do we get the most out of these? When you move your fleets across the board, what you'll be doing is taking a counter from your tactical pool and placing it on the map. Once it's on the map, you can move ships from anywhere to that hex, provided it's in the movement range of the ship and the tile that that ship is currently on has not already been activated in the same manner. So in this example, I want the black player here to activate this hex in the middle, and that means they can move in these ships, but they can also move in this ship from an adjacent tile. This ship has a movement speed of 1. It's not even on camera. There we go. This ship can't get there. It's out of range. But this ship is in range. However, it is already activated, so it cannot move. Controlling the order that you activate your systems is an important thing to do efficiently. These counters are in precious low supply, which is a common mistake made during the game. More important to understand for new players is at the end of the turn, when it says put these into your reinforcements, clear the board up, get rid of all of your counters and put them to your reinforcements, is not putting them back on your board. This is your reinforcements here, it's your unused counters. So any counter you use, you do not get back. Every turn, each player can draw 2 new counters from their reinforcements back onto their player board, and there is a technology to gain a 3rd. But mostly, you'll be gaining new counters from the leadership card. So it's about time I explained how these things work. In a 5 or 6 player game, you'll be drawing 1 of these strategy cards every turn. In a 3 or 4 player game, you will be drawing 2 of these strategy cards every turn. Now, an important point to note here for the genre player. If you're in a 4 player game, all of these strategy cards will be taken. Your racial ability gives you the ability to take the secondary of technology, but actually gain the benefit of the primary. So in a 4 player game, the genre player should never take this card themselves, because somebody's going to have it and you can still do the primary ability. So how do these cards work and what do they do? Well, somebody will be the speaker, and the first turn it's probably going to be randomly chosen, but it can move about during the game via the politics card. Choose a player other than the speaker. That player gains the speaker token. That means in a 4 player game the speaker will always move because this card will have been taken by somebody, and you cannot keep it on the same person. But notably, you do not need to pick yourself. What you can do is pick the person to your right, so that you're the second person to choose a strategy card after them. So it's the speaker who chooses the first strategy card, and then it goes around the table. Once you've been around the table, your lowest card of whichever of these you're holding, they've all numbered 1 to 8. The lowest numbered card is the person who acts first. And throughout the turn, the main gameplay, it's the initiative order, the numbers on these cards, that determine the order of play. But when choosing these cards, it's table order that matters. So leadership allows us to replenish our cards. But what if you don't get leadership and you still want to replenish some of your tokens on your command sheet? You can take the secondary ability. Most secondary abilities can be used by expending a strategy token. There are a few exceptions. Leadership is one of them. Leadership actually uses influence, a resource we haven't talked about yet. But for the majority of them, it's using a strategy token to activate the secondary ability. In general, the secondary abilities are usually a cut-down version of the primary ability, so even if you didn't manage to draw the card by controlling who's the speaker, you will still have managed to gain some benefit from that card if you take the secondary ability. A lot of the strategy of this game revolves around picking the right strategy card on the right turn. For example, when you score your victory points at the end of the game, that is done in initiative order. And if it's going to be a close finish, the turn before last, if you can correctly preempt it, you want to be taking the politics card so you can make yourself the speaker so that you can choose the leadership card on the next turn. That makes you first in initiative because leadership is number 1 for initiative. That means you'll be scoring your victory points before your rival. If it doesn't look like you're going to be able to take politics at the right time or get the right initiative order for the turn where it really matters, try making a deal for it. One of the quite interesting strategy cards is construction. So what does this do? This allows you to build space docks and planetary defence guns. But it has an interesting tweak on the secondary ability. When a player spends their strategy point, they have to actually activate the system they're building it. So anyone who takes the secondary ability of construction has to actually activate a system. So let's say our human player wants to take the secondary ability of construction. So they use their strategy counter and place it in the system. And in this case, they're going to build a planetary defence gun on their home world. But now, when they go to move and they take one of their tactical counters, suddenly they can't move their fleet. The system is already activated. Oops. So if at any point you take the construction strategy card, I recommend using it as the very first action. That way, other players will have a harder time building up their defences because they're not going to want to lock their fleets in position. So it's always a good idea to play construction as your very first action in each round. We'll come back to the strategy cards in a bit. These are a very fundamental part of the game and it's important to understand them. But let's understand more this activating a system, right? So now we know how our ships move. But we also activate a system when we want to build. Again, it's from your tactical pool. You start with 3 counters in there at the very beginning of the game. You'll soon be running out of them. So, how should you do your first moves? Now, our human player starts with 2 carriers and 5 infantry. That's a really healthy amount. But not every player is that lucky. The Expiring Kingdom here, or the Turtles as they're often called, only has 1 carrier. And they have 4 infantry. As a general rule, I like to start with 2 carriers and 4 infantry. So any race that doesn't have that, we're going to want to build. So when do we build? What's the right way to do it? As I look around the Expire's tiles, it's immediately obvious I need to capture Beffort 2. This is the only tile in front of me that's got a planet. What I want to do in the perfect world is I want to capture 4 planets, but you won't always be starting next to 4 planets. So as my first move, I'm going to activate Beffort 2. And I'm going to move a carrier in, and I'm going to take with me 2 infantry. And the reason for that is that when this carrier moves, I can take infantry with me, and somewhere along the way, there's going to be a tile with 2 planets on. So I like my carriers, each carrier, to go out carrying 2 infantry. Now, clearly, I need to make another carrier. In the opening turns, that's going to be down to the warfare card. If I'm lucky enough to have the warfare card, what this allows me to do is to remove a command token from the board and place it back on my sheet. So if I've got warfare, my second action is going to be to activate my home system, so I can now build. And then, as my third action, I'll play warfare to take this counter off my home system and place it back on my command sheet. That now means these ships can move, particularly the ones I've just built, which is going to include a carrier. The secondary ability of warfare allows me to use a strategy token from my command sheet to use the production ability of 1 space dock. So I can still use that to build the second carrier if somebody else has taken the warfare card. And here's where a lot of strategy lies in the early game. Players who've got the warfare card might try to stall its use to be as late as possible, because once you don't take an action in a turn, you're then frozen out. So as soon as you pass, you're frozen. The only thing you can do is take secondary abilities. So sure, you'll be able to build that carrier on the secondary, but you won't be able to move it because you can't take any more tactical actions the moment you've passed. So stalling with warfare is a key strategy to master. So as a rough rule of thumb, somewhere in the early stages of the game, you'll want to take leadership to stock up on command counters, even if it's not the first turn. Try to do it at some point in the first few turns to give yourself some command counters. bearing in mind the game may only run for 6 turns, so try to get this in the first 2 or 3 if you possibly can. But warfare is where the art of the tactical game comes into play in the early stages of the game. Control this card if you can, or if you don't want to, make sure you can take that secondary action and still move the fleets. You want to capture as many planets as you can on the first turn. So, we've talked a bit about when to produce, but how does production actually work? Because there's a few common mistakes here that new players or new groups might make. So it's important to understand the difference between production and resources. In fact, there are 3 things you need to consider when building: production capacity, the cost, and your fleet supply. Now, if you've read the rulebook and you didn't realise production and cost in resources are different things, it might be worth going and checking those few paragraphs again, and they maybe now might make a bit more sense. Your production value is the number of pieces of plastic you can make. So, if I've got a production of 6, I can make 6 pieces of plastic, and no, you do not get a special exception when using the cardboard counters as a substitute. They do still count as bits of plastic. It's the number of units you can make. So, if you were to, for example, make infantry, and they cost half a resource each, so for every 1 resource you spend, you get 2 infantry, that's 2 bits of plastic against your production. So ideally, you want a nice high production value. So the way production works is a standard space stock on your racial card here grants you the ability to make or a production value of 2 more than the resource value of the planet. So what's a resource value? It's the number in yellow on these cards, these planet cards that don't seem to be coming up terribly well on camera there, but there is a number on these cards surrounded by a yellow border. Every planet has a number surrounded by yellow and a number surrounded by blue. Yellow is the resource value of the planet, so your production is 2 higher than the resource value. So if I put my space dock on a planet with a resource value of 2, I have a production of 4. That means 4 pieces of plastic can be made in a single turn by that space dock anytime I activate the system. And if I use warfare to take a counter off the system, yes, I can activate it again and make another 4. So if you're playing one of the races that has multiple planets in your home system at the start of the game, make sure you put your space dock on the planet with the highest resource value. So production is how many pieces of plastic we can make, but we also have to pay for them, and that's where the resource cost comes in. Now a Dreadnought here has a cost of 4. That means we have to pay 4 resources to make a Dreadnought. And how do we do that? It again comes down to these yellow numbers. Looking at the barony of Letnev's home system, I have 2 planets, one with a resource value of 4 and the other with a resource value of 2. So if I want to build a Dreadnought, I have to use the resources of this planet. When we use the resources of a planet, we flip the card over. You cannot partially use the resources of a planet in a single action. So if I was to build a little destroyer which only has a resource cost of 1 and I flipped that planet of 4 over, I would be being terribly inefficient. And my advice to you is to be efficient. Be efficient with the resources you spend. Expiring planets is an expensive process. We don't get these planets back once we've expired them until the following turn. So try to do 1 build action a turn where you use all your resources to make as many units as you possibly can. Now the third thing we have to balance is our fleet supply. So what is this fleet supply? These 3 counters sitting on our command sheet is the number of capital ships that we can have in a single hex on the map. And the capital ships are anything from a destroyer upwards, so all of these are capital ships. Our little cheap fighters, however, are not capital ships. They're essentially free in terms of fleet supply. there's another restriction we'll deal with in just a moment. Now, fighters and infantry are both handled differently in the game to everything else. So your capital ships use fleet supply, and you'll probably, in your second turn, most people will end up taking a counter out of their fleet supply, depending on the race you're playing, and end up with just 2 in there, and then they'll run desperately short of fleet supply, and it'll become a problem for them later. Fighters work differently. Fighters cost 1, but you get 2 of them. Same for infantry. They are both, effectively, they cost half each, but you have to spend at least 1. You can't spend half resources in this game, so you spend 1 resource, you get 2 of them. But fighters are limited by capacity. It's kind of the 4th thing we have to consider when building units and also moving units. Now, at the start of the game, our standard technology space stock, which most of the time will be the only space stock you ever have, as upgrading space stocks with higher tech doesn't often come up in play, but it can. However, a standard space stock has a capacity of 3 fighters. A carrier has a capacity of 4, but you see, for most things, it will actually tell you the capacity on the sheet, on your racial sheet. So the Dreadnoughts, there's one from the Baronies player's got a Dreadnought here, that has a capacity of 1. So when we're building, we need to consider the production, which is how many units we can build, the resources, which is what they cost, the fleet supply, which is how many capital ships we can have in a single tile, and the capacity in the case of building fighters. Now, you can fit as many infantry as you like on a planet, but if you're moving your infantry between planets using a carrier, they also use that capacity that your fighters are using. And if that hasn't completely blown your brain up, well, there's still more to learn. Yes, it's a complicated game, and there's lots to learn, but if you remember the 3 base things, production is different to cost, which is different to fleet supply. These are the 3 things you want to consider when you do some manufacturing. Capacity is also relevant if you're building fighters. Now, because in practice your production value won't be as high as you'd like, you're probably going to build a big ship in there, maybe a Dreadnought or a cruiser, and you won't be building that many fighters unless you're playing the funny snake people very near somewhere. Oh yeah, the Nalu. The Nalu are all about fighters. All their racial abilities lean toward them. So for the most part, you'll be filling out your spare capacity of production and resources with fighters and infantry. Oh, for your Federation of Sol, you'll want lots of infantry. Oh gosh, the exceptions to standard practice go on and on and on. There are 17 races in the base game, and there's probably going to be an expansion at some point that will add even more. So, you figured out how to do your movement and production for the first turn. On the second turn, you'll get all your planets back, and you can start expiring them again when you do your next turn of manufacturing. Now, as a general rule, you probably will never build another space dock. If you do, it takes several turns to get a space dock up and running. First, you activate the system to move into it and conquer the planet. On your next turn, you're able to then do the construction or take construction as a strategy card to build the space dock. But then on the third turn, you finally get around to using it. I mean, you can do it quicker when you need to, but you're probably only going to be making things in your home system. And the game is only going to run 6 turns. That means slow-moving ships built in the latter part of the game may not see action unless it's defensive. That means War Suns have limited use in this game, unless you're the Muat player, in which case you start with one. War Suns are a high-technology unit. They're basically Death Stars, or with the way the model looks, kind of a death squid. These are slow-moving, very powerful units with lots of capacity, very expensive to build. You need to unlock a lot of technology to even build them. Odds are you're not going to get effective use out of the War Sun in a 10-point game, and probably not in a 14-point game. So consider that when you're deciding what technologies to research. So technology is one of the strategy cards. If you take this card, you basically get a free technology. But you can spend 6 resources. Oops. You can spend 6 of your resources, so flip over 6 points worth of planets. In the case of the bounty of Letnev that we used in our example earlier, that's both planets, and that will give you an extra technology. When you're taking this card, ideally you want to be doing that. So remember to save some resources to do your technology. If you take the secondary of this, you'll be using a strategy token and 4 resources just to research 1 technology. It's generally worth doing. Players who don't take any technology at all invariably will struggle by the end of the game. And that doesn't mean you necessarily need to maximize your technology, but usually the winner is not somebody who didn't research a single technology. But you don't have time in this game to research every technology available, so you're going to need to decide what technologies to get. And that is a deep and involved topic all by itself. And I'm not going to go too much into it here. If you really want to be high technology, take the Jolnar, the universities of Jolnar. You will basically get a load of technology, whatever you do. Technology just falls on the universities of Jolnar. But for everyone else, you're going to need to take some time and consider what technologies you're going to go for. So how does technology research work? The technologies you start the game with are written in the bottom corner of the back of your racial card. Do remember that's where they are. You do not start with your racial technologies. That's a common mistake. So every race, if you find, there we go, every race starts with 2 racial technologies, but you don't start with them. You simply have them available to you to research. And a common mistake is that people think, racial technologies, we start with them. You don't. So your first clue as to what direction to take your research is probably going to be in your racial tech. So I'm looking at the barony of Letnev here, and you see this technology is on the red path, this one's on the yellow path. So you notice there are technology symbols on both sides. This card here has 2 little red symbols on one side and a big red symbol on the other. So how does that work? Well, there are 4 tech trees in the game. We have the red tree, the yellow tree, the blue tree, and the green tree. And the way they essentially work is this. Red is for weapons and doing more damagey type stuff. Yellow is about production and economy type stuff. Blue is generally about fleet movement around the board. And green is kind of... What is green? It's kind of your more action cards, more counters to your strategy and tactical counters. The X-89 bacterial weapon, which is a rubbish tech that doesn't really help but can remove all infantry from a planet, and stuff like that. So, generally, blues are the strongest tech, and yellows probably the ones behind that. The War Suns are on the red, just so you know. But allow yourself to be swayed or influenced by your racial tech. So you might well find that your racial techs are on the green. I'm looking at you, Federation of Sol, with your Spec Ops 2 unit upgrade. Yes, it's on the green, but they also have a technology on the blue. If you play a strategy that revolves around taking the research card lots, you might well get both of your racial technologies, and you'll probably find for a large number of the races, the racial technologies are generally on different or related paths. If you take technology as a card you take a lot, if you're playing a high-tech game, you might well be able to unlock 2 tech paths. If you don't, you're probably looking at unlocking one, maybe a little bit of another. You probably won't completely unlock a full tech tree, all the technologies within a particular tree, but sometimes the last technology in a tree is not very good. In the case of blue, however, It's really amazing. Light wave deflectors is it's a bit of a game changer in the latter stages of the game. So that's the strategy of technology, but how about the mechanics? So each card has a number of small icons and a big icon. So all of my blue ones have a single big blue icon. So every time I research one of these, I get a big blue icon. And that means I can then, so let's say I've got the first one, it has no smalls, has one big blue icon. Now that I've got a big blue icon, I can research any card that has one small blue icon. So the small ones are your prerequisites. So as my second technology, I'm going to get this second blue one. Now I have two big blue icons. That means I have two blue technology. I can research a technology that has two blue prerequisites. And that's how it works. So each of the 4 technology trees in the game basically have no prerequisites, 1 prerequisite, 2, 3. It's linear. So each one unlocks the next card. Where it starts to get interesting is on the unit upgrades. Ta-da! We have some units. So our Cruiser 2 here requires 1 green, 1 yellow, 1 red. Maybe that's a technology we want to work towards. Our Destroyer 2 requires 2 red. Our Carrier 2 requires 2 blue. Federation of Soul player, definitely go blue. Not that you'll get Carrier 2, you've got a racial tech for it. Our Dreadnought requires 2 blue and 1 yellow. Now notice the unit upgrades do not grant you advancement down a particular tree. So once I've got 2 blue technologies and 1 yellow, I can research a Dreadnought, but the Dreadnought is not going to take me further down that tree. I won't be researching light wave deflectors because Dreadnought's unlocked to blue. It doesn't do that. There is no large blue icon on this card. So that's technology. Now what about trade? Trade should be a big part of your galactic empire. And there's some common mistakes here as well. So, first of all, what does the strategy card do? If you take the strategy card, you gain 3 trade goods. A trade good can be exchanged in place of a single resource or influence. So anytime you need either influence or resources, you can use trade goods instead. That means you can build more stuff or win more votes in the Galactic Senate. It's generally you're going to be using them for resources rather than influence, but you might find that you want to buy some leadership tokens with them, but usually you'll use them to build bigger fleets. So trade is a good way to build big fleets. You can replenish your commodities. So every race has a number of commodities. It's written here on your racial sheet, so the Hakan player gets 6 commodities. Your commodities are kind of worthless to you. They represent goods that your species produces, but they're abundant in your society. They don't really add anything to your economy. But if you were to give them to another player, they become trade goods. That means if I, as the Hakan player, give my 6 commodities to another player, things that are worthless to me, to that other player, they are worth 6 trade goods. And lastly, I can choose any number of other players and they can refresh their commodities too. So, here's the thing. If you're the player that takes trade, you want to make sure that people aren't trading without you getting the benefit. You're the trader, you're the one that took the strategy card. If they want to replenish their commodities, charge them a trade good for it. Make them give you one of those commodities. Or do a 1-for-1 trade with them, but make sure it's with you, not somebody else. If you can't get anyone to trade with you, do a 1-for-1 trade. But as a general rule, replenishing commodities is usually worth one of those commodities. Now, some races, like the Sardak Nor, do not get many commodities. In fact, the Barony of the Letnev get very few indeed. They only get 2. Solid Nor actually apparently gets 3. Barony of Letniv only get 2 commodities, so to them, giving up one of those commodities might be a high price to pay, but you know what? They have a racial ability that can make use of trade goods. So, although they don't get many commodities, they probably still want to trade. The secondary ability of trade allows you to replenish your own commodities, but it's going to cost you a strategy token. Now, in real terms, a strategy token costs you 3 influence to get on leadership. If you're taking the secondary of leadership, every 3 influence you've got can get you 1 command counter. So, in many ways, replenishing commodities is kind of worth 3 trade goods, except of course most people only get 3 or 4 commodities, so it isn't worth that much. It's a balance. Your table's going to need to find what you think commodities are worth. To me, they're generally worth paying 1 trade good for. I'll give up one of my commodities to have my commodities replenished. That allows me to trade with somebody else. Should all trades be 1 for 1? Probably not. Different people have different numbers of commodities available. As the Hakan player, anytime you replenish your commodities, and bearing in mind, you can replenish yours without it costing you a strategy point. You don't even need to take trade if you don't want to. Although, as the Hakan player, if you do take trade, you can block out anyone else from having trade control at all, and you just take control of trade. There's a whole strategy here for Hakan. Okay, so let me explain it. Gosh, I know, it's a long video, right? So, Hakan get a lot of commodities. They're the cat people, they are traders. Trading is what they do. Now, they don't need to take the trade card to replenish their commodities. Anytime trade is played, they're going to have 6 commodities in stock. Now, you can never have more commodities than the number on your racial sheet. If you have 4 commodities and they get replenished, you still only have 4 commodities. Hakan have 6. So in a 4-player game where trade is going to be taken by somebody, Hakan, if they took trade, completely control trade. Nobody else will get a word in edgeways. But if they don't take trade, what's going to happen? Hakan are going to always have 6 commodities. They're always going to be someone you can trade with. They're going to get rich. If you give Hakan a 1-for-1 deal, they will win eventually. Because they'll just be so rich. You can't compete against massive wealth to the scale that Hakan can build up if they keep getting fair trades with everyone every turn, and they're spending all 6 commodities by trading to 4 over there, 2 over there, the next turn 3 there, 3 there. You can't compete with that much wealth. And the way you do it is by not allowing Hakan to control trade. Hakan don't need to take this card, but in a 4-player game, they probably should, because if Hakan can control the trade, they can ensure they're getting a fair 1-for-1 deal with everyone else at the table, because Hakan are going to trade with someone. It may as well be you. They're the ones that can replenish your commodities because they've got the trade card. That's how the game works. Hakan, in a 4-player game, want to be all over this. In a 5 or 6-player game, though, it might not get taken. You're going to have to work out for yourself what's going to work best for you and your group in those situations. Trade is a popular card, though, and invariably somebody will want to take it. So what about the cards we haven't explained? There's Diplomacy. Diplomacy allows you to replenish 2 planets in the same system. So if you've got a system with 2 planets that you've expired the planets by spending the resources or the influence, you can replenish them. But as the person who takes this card, you have to make sure those 2 planets are in the same system. If you were to take the secondary ability where you're spending a strategy counter, you can replenish planets in different systems. Diplomacy is a strange card like that. It can be useful in the first turn to build twice as much stuff up. if you get the opportunity to activate your home system twice, if you've got warfare and diplomacy, for example, in a 4-player game, that might work as a strategy. But the secondary is kind of more powerful than the primary, but the secondary will cost you one of your command counters. The last one is Imperial. Now, when you've got Imperial, it's a funny card at the start of the game. In a 5 or 6 player game, it probably won't be taken in the first few turns. Its main purpose is to grant a victory point to whoever controls Mechatol Rex. Now, control of Mechatol Rex. Oh boy, there's a topic. Before we get to that though, it does have another property. You can immediately score objective victory point objectives. We haven't really spoken properly about those yet. The secondary ability of this allows you to spend a strategy token to get a secret objective. We haven't even mentioned them yet. Imperial is our gateway to the next part of this video. Slap bang in the middle of the board is this huge planet called Mechatol Rex. The first player to land troops on Mechatol Rex will gain a victory point. To do that, they're going to have to spend 6 influence. That's the blue number on your planet cards. Barony of Letnev player starts with only 1. They're going to have to capture other planets first. Usually Mechatol Rex will be settled in somewhere between the 2nd and the 4th turn of the game. A player will have accrued enough influence and will land troops there in that window of the game. And from that point on, every time you've completed your tactical moves, the Galactic Council will open. Now, the Galactic Council is where you get to spend the influence on your planets. So, an important point to remember here is any expired planet gets flipped back over for this phase. So, if you've spent influence and resources during the tactical phase, you get them back for the Galactic Senate phase. Now, planets with resources don't matter in this phase. This phase is all about the influence. So my extra player here has 2 planets and they are worth 4 influence. 3 on this one and 1 on this planet. By the time Mechatol's opened, I'll probably control a lot more planets. Now, if you are a player without much influence, you can still be pivotal in this phase. You might not be able to get the laws you want, but you can sell them for other people's commodities or trade goods. During the Galactic Senate phase, you're going to be drawing from this deck. This is the deck of laws and directives. So a law is something that will have effect for the entire game, and a directive is something that takes place immediately. So at the start of the phase, one of these is revealed. In this case, I've drawn core mining, and it's a law, so it's going to have an impact for the rest of the game. Elect a hazardous planet. Oh, we haven't talked about planet types. Apart from home systems, every planet will have an icon. Either this green icon, that means it's an industrial planet, this blue icon, that means it's a cultural planet, or this red icon, that means it's a hazardous planet. That's pretty much it. I'm thinking they'll probably use that a little more in an expansion, but it does impact these laws. So, core mining, we have to elect a hazardous planet. Attach this card to the elected planets card, then destroy an infantry on that planet. The resource value of this planet is increased by 2, so somebody who controls a hazardous planet is going to get the resource value of that planet increased by 2. This law is going to elect a planet. There are a few exceptions of the game where a law can be dismissed. The Extra Kingdom have the ability to quash a law, for example. There are ways to override a previous law, and there's laws for that. Of course there is. But for the purpose of our Galactic Council, we're going to vote which hazardous planet gets it. Now, it can't be a home system because we have to elect a hazardous planet. Each player will nominate a hazardous planet and a number of votes. And the planet with the most votes wins. You do not have to vote for your own planet. You can sell your votes to another player. Why would you not use all of your votes? Because there's a second law. Each phase we're going to be voting on 2. In this case, I've drawn a directive. Swords to plowshares. So, any votes I didn't spend on the first vote, I can now use on the second vote. So what does this one do? This directive. If we pass for the motion, each player destroys half of their infantry on each planet they control, rounded up. Then, for each infantry destroyed in this way, they gain a trade good. If the motion is voted against, each player places 1 infantry from their reinforcements on each planet they control. So every planet gets an extra infantry. And each player will now decide if they're voting for or against and how many votes. Now, it might be that you don't use any votes at all. You might abstain on the vote. But during the course of the game, you'll pick up action cards. You get 1 each turn, I think it is. You can gain more with the politics card. Anytime you play the primary on this, you can pick up 2 more action cards. And action cards are little random things that you pick it up and then you gain the ability to do something, some random effect in the game. Now, if an action card you pick up is a rider, you can play it during a vote. There are different riders available in the game, such as a construction rider, where you can, if you correctly predict the outcome of a vote, you can build, I think it's a space dock or a PDS. In this case, I got a politics rider. So, after the agenda is revealed, these are all agendas, the directives and laws. The deck is called an agenda deck. After an agenda is revealed, you cannot vote on this agenda if you play the particular rider. You cannot vote on this agenda. Predict aloud an outcome of this agenda. If your prediction is correct, draw 3 action cards and gain the speaker token. So, if I were to play this rider, I wouldn't be allowed to vote, but if I'm correct in my prediction, I can gain 3 action cards and the speaker token. However, do not underestimate the influence cards like this can have in getting the opposite result to whatever you predict. You can use this ability for the, if you think a vote's going to go a certain way, consider playing a rider on it. If you don't want that particular outcome, and if you don't have the influence to stop it, place a rider and predict the outcome that you don't actually want. And people might be more inclined to vote for the opposite outcome so that your rider doesn't pay off. Let's talk about victory points. There are 3 different types of victory point card. Some with 1 on the back, some with the number 2 on the back, and these secret cards. These are secret objectives. At the start of the game, you'll be dealt a couple of secret objectives. Pick one you think you can complete, the other goes to discard. The others will be laid out like this, a row of 5 1s and a row of 5 2s. And at the start of the game, the first 2 objectives are revealed. Now, before the agenda phase, in initiative order, every player claims victory points that they can get. Now, for most of the game, the initiative order won't matter, but in the final turns, it might matter. And that's where the battle for control of the speaker token really counts, because you want to have leadership when you think it's going to be the last turn of the game, so that you can get your victory points scoring first, so you're the first person to 10. And to get these victory points, we simply do what's on the card. So the first one here is to erect a monument. We have to spend 8 resources to score this victory point. So if I've saved 8 resources, remember I can use trade good in place of resources or influence. If I've got 8 resources saved by not producing stuff, then I can score this victory point. I put my token on it and I increase 1 point. This one is own 2 technologies in each of 2 colours. quite a few of these cards are technology related. I think it's 4 in total, possibly 6. Can't remember, but technology is a good way to score victory points. That's why it's unusual for somebody who doesn't research any technology at all to win the game. So, each turn, a new one of these is revealed after you've scored your points. So, I've claimed my VP, we reveal the next objective. Lead from the front. Spend a total of 3 tokens from your tactics and or strategy pools, starving you of command counter resources. After all of the top row are revealed, we start revealing the 2-point victory cards. Spend 10 trade goods to score this one, and it goes on until the final turn, when all of the objectives have been revealed and no more can be. It's game over. But odds are the game will end on turn 5 or 6. Usually there's still a few of these remaining to be turned over. So, knowing that the game is likely to end around here, keep in your mind, you want to be the player on 10 VP when we get to here. This is Twilight Imperium. Nothing else matters. This is where the Imperial Strategy card matters. Primary ability. Immediately score 1 public objective if you fulfill its requirements. So you can score a couple of VP here during the tactical phase of the game. Gain 1 victory point if you control Mechatol Rex. Otherwise, draw a secret objective. You can score 3 secret objectives during the course of the game at a maximum of 1 each turn. And you probably should. That means you're going to need to take the Imperial card a few times from the midpoint of the game onwards. Secondary ability. Spend 1 token from your strategy pool to draw 1 secret objective. If you don't get the card at all, then, well, consider taking the secondary to get that secret objective. To do that, you're going to need to have spare command counters. That means getting influence planets. And influence planets don't get you any resources. Oh my god, there's so much you need. But you know what? It's all a distraction. The game is about the victory points. There are 20-odd objective cards in the game. You'll only be revealing somewhere around 7 of them-ish. Those are the things that will matter in your game. Read those cards as they're revealed. They matter. Everything else is just a distraction. This whole video, it's just the mechanics of how you score these VPs. These are how you win the game. Ignore the rest. Except you need to know it to actually score the VPs, but the VPs are what's important. If you've got a VP come up that says, spend 8 resources, that means 8 resources from your planets, the yellow number around your planets. You're probably not going to do any production that turn because you want to score that objective. You want to be scoring an objective every turn. If you can on the first turn, you might not be able to on the first turn or 2, but try if you can, because that's how you win this game, scoring objectives. And just a little tip that this objective tracker or victory point tracker can easily get knocked and adjusted, especially when you've got 6 people with tokens on here. It can get knocked, so always put a token on anything you score, including holding Mechatol Rex. Just stack tokens up on there every time you score it. That way, if ever these counters are knocked, you can work out what the score should be. Guys, that's it. That's my guide on how to win TI, as much as I can give. I mean, we could talk for months and months about different strategies that do work or might work with one race and don't work with another, but the basic mechanics are here, and kind of what to do. But look, here's my advice. Make sure your first couple of turns you're at maximum efficiency for movement and production. Make sure you control where, if you don't control the warfare card, make sure you don't get stalled out. Keep enough tactical actions available to yourself to not get stalled out of making use of the warfare card, to get that production on your home system. Because like I've said, you're probably going to be producing most of your units on your home system. You then, in the early turns, want to move them the same turn. That means making use of the warfare secondary. Or, the primary if you control that. I mean, warfare's a great card whether you use the primary or the secondary. In those first turns, it's a really great card. Try to get leadership in the early stages, but importantly, capture as many planets as you can. And don't sweat it if somebody gets a resource you want, a planet you want. Don't sweat it if somebody attacks you on your border. This isn't a game about warfare. If you go into a sustained war with another player, you will lose. You both will. That's how you take a player out of the game, but it means you can't win. Wars are expensive. Producing all the units, moving them over, the amount of command counters it takes, and sure, you might defeat the other player, but you won't get the victory points. This brings up the topic of king-making in board games, and it is possible for a player who isn't going to win to decide who wins. TI is a game where king-making gets discussed by groups. At some point, any group that plays it a lot will come up with their own rules on king-making. Here's what I suggest and recommend for your first games, and I still use it with my group to this day, from the very first game to the ones we still play. King-making is fine, provided the reason for it is within the confines of the game that you're playing. Don't let things from a previous game or things from outside of the game influence king-making in the game. But if some empire steals a planet that you felt was important to you and it looks like you're not going to win, yeah, have some fun. King-make. Because, it's reasonable for your empire to have felt scorned. But if you're still playing for the win, don't worry about it. Don't sweat it. I mean, my second online game that I played of this with strangers, and it was a 6-player game, and it was the other game I didn't win. I had just my home system in the final turn of the game. I'd been decimated, but I still came second. I didn't win that one, but it was close. This is an amazing game. It's the best board game I have ever played. I love every aspect of it. It's so vast and complex, and there's so much to it. There are little rules I haven't even touched on here. There are cards here that will make and break different games. There will be heartbreaks. There will be amazing moments. And, when you sit down to play this game, you invest all day in it, and it can be frustrating when you're not having a great game, but you kind of stay playing anyway because other people at the table are going to be impacted if you just got up and walked off. Actually, that's never really happened to me. I've always enjoyed every moment, even in my crushing defeat. The first online time I played online, I was utterly destroyed at this game, playing the Necrovirus. I got it completely wrong, the tactics for the race. I'd never played them before and it was a disaster, but you know what? I still enjoyed that game. It was an experience. Playing online, the thing people tend to use for that is a game called Tabletop Simulator, and you can get Twilight Imperium for it, and there's a Discord group you can find and such. And I was kind of overwhelmed by the speed at which everyone was doing things, and I didn't think enough about the strategy and lost. But there are so many ways to win this game, and there's so much in the meta of your group, and it's an experience. It elevates being a board game to being an experience of it's like At the weekend, do you go down the pub, or do you do something a bit different? Maybe go to the theatre and take in a show. TI's like that. It's the experience. It's the game you don't get to play very often. I get to play it sort of every 2 to 4 months. That's it. Because it's such a vast game, I have to get friends in from miles away and have to get here early enough to get a full day's gaming in. We play to 14 points. And you know what? Those are the best days.